Yo, what's up, guys? This is Bruce Karlsson, and I'm on the Nebula podcast.
All right, what is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here once again, and welcome to the Nebula Music Podcast. As you guys already know, this is a show where I talk to some of today's most inspiring, coolest, and most passionate people in the music industry. I pride myself because I bring some of the most talented people in the music industry, whether they're notable, up and coming, or maybe even underground. I kind of find the best people and bring them on the show to explore their creativity and just, find out what drives their passion. And today is no exception to that rule because I have somebody whose resume, just to start off with, their resume is so incredible. When I first found out all the stuff that this guy has done, my jaw dropped to the floor. And so I couldn't wait to have him on the show. But what I respect is just that this is one of those guys that when you meet him, I imagine that he's incredibly humble, but the credits to his name, like, God damn, I don't know how you could remain so humble with all that shit. But I don't want to ramble too long. I would much rather my guests do most of the talking. I have Mr. Bruce Karlsson, an amazing producer, joining me today on the show. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Humbled to be on here.
Oh man, you don't have to be, because you're incredibly talented. Like your resume and shit, like, which we're gonna get into. But like when I discovered that you work with music, you're a producer, but that you work with a lot of people, to me it was quite the honor to be able to have you on the show. But before we even get into that, I know we were talking a little bit about it before the interview started, but it's kind of something I've been doing this year with a lot of the guests that I've had on the show. I just kind of want to know more specifically how you've been handling the lockdown, and because this year is such a strange year for music. I think it's very important for musicians out there to kind of like hear how other musicians are handling it, because everyone's handling it very differently. So I know that you've been handling it pretty well, but I just kind of want to reiterate it a little bit. How has the lockdown been for you so far?
Yeah, it definitely has been a strange year. I mean, it's at the beginning we didn't know exactly what to expect after all the gigs were pretty much just shot down. We had a whole tour for my FATUM group, pretty much lined up with Blau, and just everything just gone.
Yeah.
So we were trying to figure out, kind of nail biting for a minute, but then immediately I told my music partner, since I've been like diving in Twitch and stuff like that, and I've been gaming like a lot, pretty almost my whole life,
Nice.
but yeah, but so I told him, let's jump on Twitch, because obviously we have to. All the other DJs are doing exactly the same thing, but we tried to figure out, how we can make it a little bit different, a little bit more, like kind of like a home body feeling, and it started popping off actually. Like a lot of we've developed a whole community now, and and it feels like something that we can actually drag on to or overlap after the whole COVID stuff when gigs are coming back. And we'd love to do like pre-parties on Twitch before other people's show and stuff, like when Above and Beyond's got ABGT or something, we can do like pre-parties before that, and kind of you know start some kind of, I guess, a new era of being able to be on like streaming, even and get gig online and in real life too.
Yeah, streaming has definitely been one of those things where, well, what's interesting about the whole streaming thing, man, is there's been a lot of people in the tech universe and also some more of the executives in the music industry that I know that were talking about streaming last year, which is coincidental that this lockdown happened because many people were starting to look into it, but it was one of those things where it was like on the list, but it wasn't priority. It was like, we'll explore that within the next year or two. And then the lockdown hit, and it's like streaming immediately started taking over a lot of shit, which is crazy. It's
Yep.
it's crazy. So I'm interested. You're a gamer then, to some extent.
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of games are you into? I'm curious.
So I used to play Counter-Strike actually professionally
Oh shit! No
10
way.
years ago, though. This is like over 10 years ago. And then after that, I, went to school, and then, moved into doing music, and just, it just kind of just stuck finally, something stuck. But then, my music partner showed me Twitch, and like it was like about like 3 years ago, I'd say. He showed me Twitch, and I knew what Twitch was because one of my friends, he's like actually a big Twitch streamer, and I didn't realize that like that's what he was doing. This is when I quit gaming back then, and he was on my team and everything. And basically, I heard from someone else that he was making like 6 grand a month or something doing streaming, and I was like,
Nice.
"What? What's that?" I was like, "Damn, like that's cool." But I'm like, but I was so into music at that when I first started. I was like, I don't know if I want to get back into gaming or whatever. And then come to find 10 years later, he's like one of the biggest streamers on there, and I'm like, damn, what the heck?
Who is this streamer, if I can ask? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to know.
Summit.
Gotcha. No, I don't know the name.
Okay.
I haven't. I really need to dive into the whole like like Twitch streaming gaming thing because I'm a huge gamer myself. Like I never competed professionally, but like I love gaming and I've been gaming since I was very young. I'm very huge into the whole RPG world, but like CS:GO, I definitely loved CS:GO. That was like a huge 2-3 years for me just playing that. Transition into like I play Rainbow Six Siege a lot. I'm not sure if you've ever played that game.
I haven't played it, but I definitely know the game.
The mechanics are very similar to CS:GO, a little more polished, but it's like
Okay.
the same whole concept. But the whole gaming thing, it's very interesting because I do feel like it's one of those things that's kind of popped off over the past couple of years. But now that it's sort of that whole medium of streaming, now that's transitioned into music. I'm curious for you, what was it? Because you did mention how you were trying to do some stuff that were slightly a little bit different from what everybody else was doing. What were some of the things that you tried to implement in terms of music and gaming and streaming, all of that put together? What were some of the things that you did that were slightly different from what other musicians were doing on Twitch and stuff?
Mainly trying to, I guess, make it a little bit more interactive and fun, because like when I was coming to like DJs just coming on and just playing a set, we'd notice, like a lot of them don't interact like a lot of the other Twitch streamers do, and that's because a
Yeah.
lot of them didn't know how to stream basically. Like I've been watching Twitch for the last 3 years and kind of developing a knowledge of like how they interact with their fans. They're thanking every person that donates, thanking every follower almost.
Yeah.
Just basically interacting as much as possible. And I think that's why our Twitch has grown so much, is because like while Dan's DJing, I'm sitting there in the chat room and like talking to everybody and making sure everybody's entertained and just, having a shit show basically, making fun of Dan or Dan making fun of me, just doing random things that basically entertain people's day, getting them through this whole entire thing.
Yeah, and that is a very astute observation. That's actually something I have noticed too, and it's very wise that you bring it up because I do feel like that's the whole concept of streaming. It's one of those things where you see it, right? Like for example, for me, like there's a couple gamers I do follow, but I watch them more on YouTube than I do on Twitch. But like I've seen them upload their Twitch streams on YouTube, right? And you're right, there is like this sort of like they're playing and they'll be like, oh yeah, thank you so and so for that, and then they'll crack a joke or whatever. That's something you don't really get anywhere else, and especially with music, I feel like that is very reminiscent to performing live on stage when you can like you're playing or performing and then you see somebody and you're like, hey, I like the shirt or whatever, shout out to this dude over there, is the same concept. So part of me wonders like why that didn't translate over to most musicians, because I do feel like you're right. I feel like at the beginning many musicians that were on Twitch didn't get that. They just kind of performed and that was it. But you would think that they would know that. I don't know. Why do you think that wasn't so natural, and why were you one of like the first to do it? Or like what? Yeah.
And personally, I mean, I think it's just because a lot of DJs just didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Because like a lot of people didn't know this was gonna like a pandemic was gonna happen.
Yeah.
And just like I think it was just more of like they needed to do something rather than nothing. So I think they just obviously just hopped on board the whole Twitch train and didn't really do their homework, I guess, and on like looking at other streamers and see what they're actually doing and seeing how to make this a real thing. Because I think a lot of DJs were looking at this as like just a quick, they're gonna stream and then pandemic's gonna be over and they're gonna start digging again, and not really thinking of it as like this could be something that could elevate their career and not just maintain it for the time being. And that's something that we wanted to wanted to actually do is do a bit of homework on the other streamers and make sure that this is something that could be have longevity rather than just through the pandemic.
Yeah. And so in terms of longevity, assuming that this whole pandemic is, over by next year, which, I keep hearing so many different reports, so many different opinions on what's actually going to happen. But it looks like a lot of people are anticipating for this to be semi over, at least for music, late next year. In your opinion, how is like streaming gonna, continue playing a part in music? Because I feel like once everything is semi normal ish and people can go to shows, I do feel like there is going to be this period of time where people are just going to be dying to go out. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
so what do
It's
you?
already started too, like with the
Yeah,
live shows that are happening.
exactly.
Immediately sold out.
Yeah. So how do you think that this whole streaming thing in terms of music, how's that gonna play out? 3, 4, 5 years from now, where things should be normal.
It's hard to say because I mean, we didn't know there was going to be a pandemic, so it's hard to say what's actually going to happen.
Right.
Sure, but I think this is definitely going to last for another 2 years at least. Where and we'll see how we can elevate like what we're doing on our Twitch and like what some of the other Twitch streamers doing that are doing something similar to us as well. Like I said, it'd be cool to have again pre-party shows that are more that are catered specifically to particular shows around the world that like you can do something if some like I said if Above and Beyond is playing in the UK or something, we do a pre-party over here and people can come and enjoy their time before they actually go to the show. Everyone loves to go and like pre-drink and stuff like that, but now they have something actually to like pre-drink too.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably going to be the next level, and then maybe doing more interactions with other Twitch streamers, through games and stuff. And that's basically been my thing that I've been trying to cross over. Basically, is I've been wanting to get back into my gaming roots and start competing again, and eventually, hopefully, grow like a bit of a community in the gaming scene, so then I can promote like the music over and overlap each other, and kind of try to like fuse them together because gaming and music are pretty much they go hand in hand.
They do.
But I have noticed that the gaming industry doesn't go and like want to watch like people DJing, and same with people that love watching DJs don't like watching like just gaming. Really
Exactly.
interesting. So there's only some crossover, but I've done like music tutorials where not nobody wants to really watch that much, but then when we start DJing, everybody wants to watch that. But then when I start gaming, very few people want to watch it. So I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, this is weird.
Well, you know what it is? I mean, I don't know if I'm correct, but I do feel like at this point in time, we're almost what 10 months into this whole scenario, maybe about and I feel like by now, I feel like a lot of the pockets of like the new fan bases have already kind of formed, and so people
Mm-hmm.
there's so much content, specifically right now in this point in history, that the attention spans, in my opinion and in my experience, are significantly lower than ever before. Like it was when it first started, people were dying for like content, and then now I feel like it's kind of like I don't know, balanced out a little bit. So that could be it. That
Yeah.
could be why. But
100%.
I don't. But you're right. I do feel like when it comes to gaming and music, it's very rare when you can mix the both at the same time. It isn't something that's very normally done, which is rare. It's really rare. I feel like a lot of people that are into like DJing and stuff like games. But I'm curious if you don't mind me picking your brain a little bit of like what it was like to be a professional gamer. I know we want to talk about music, but all this plays into who you are. I'm wondering, what was it like to be a professional gamer? That's something that not many people can say that they were. And then why did you quit to do music? I'm curious.
So yeah, basically, I mean, it's exhilarating, honestly. It's like any other like sport, but you're basically just kind of like working your brain more than anything. So it's just like it's competition, you're getting I get the rush from just clutching around or something like that, and that's like something that as like I don't know, I'm a very competitive person, so it's like something that is just exhilarating. But I mainly quit because mainly well back then when the gaming industry kind of like started to blow up, it eventually got like pretty much greedy. A lot of the tournaments ended up not wanting to pay out like people, and people started scamming and stuff like that.
Really?
The gaming industry kind of flopped for a while, and that's why I think it didn't like grow as quick as it should have. And it felt like it took like a good like 6 7 years where I didn't really hear anything about gaming until Twitch became a lot more popular, and then
Right.
came out, and that's what really kind of like made the gaming industry really pop off and become more recognizable. But yeah, there was a time when like the gaming industry was just being super greedy and scammy, and like nobody that's at the point where I needed to quit because I was like, I don't see a future in this right now, and I need to do something obviously with my life. So it was me going to school, and then falling into music, and I was just like, oh, I guess it's music then.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. And then how did you end up on a team, on a gaming team?
Basically, it started out with just friends. Like, we started with friends, and then I ended up going, playing tournaments and stuff like that, and then getting on a team for a little bit, like pretty much was like kind of like a semi-pro team.
Yeah.
And then that's when we went to one of the like the LA international tournaments, where we played against a Korean team, European team, and that was the point where I was just like, yo, this is so much fun, like this is so sick. But then literally a year after that, that's when the whole gaming industry kind of started flopping, and it sucked. After I got back into gaming now, I was just like, damn, I really miss, like, you know, there's that sometimes where I wish I had maybe had just stuck doing Twitch or something and just kept gaming, but at other times I wouldn't change anything for the world, because like being in the music industry and this whole, being able to travel and all that kind of stuff has been, a blessing for sure.
Oh, for sure, and it's something that I wouldn't change either. Like I definitely love
Yeah.
some of the experiences I've had with music.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta confess something to you. It's something actually I don't ever really tell people. Sometimes people ask me like what my schedule looks like, and I tell a lot of people that I'm a huge gamer and I've always have been. But I've tried for so many years. Like I would say maybe my mid 20s. I'm 30 now, so maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I tried quitting gaming because a lot of people were doing it at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
people were like saying like to be successful you need all this. So I was exploring a lot of different options, but I never
Mm-hmm.
ever found like a way to do it because I love it so much, and it actually helps me to focus, oddly enough. So I do it. I kid you not. I literally play like 4 hours a day.
Yep.
I wake up at like 4 in the morning and I'll play until about 8 or 9 so that I can then start my day like right at 9. Yep. And that's like that's the only way I can do it, and it actually fucking helps me. But I mean, I'm glad that you're exploring it because I do feel like it's such a fun thing to do.
It is.
So then you quit gaming, you put that on hold for a little bit, and then you decided to study music. So, or to, at least to work on music. So how did that transition happen? Why did you choose? How did you go from gaming straight to music? Like, was that seamless, or did you just pick out randomly, or how did that happen?
It was just honestly really random, because like I after I quit gaming, I I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. So I ended, just went to school, for architecture, and started doing that. And then during that time, one of my friends was just telling me about, like, raves and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, I've heard about them and everything, but I never, I went to one. So he was like, dude, you have to come with me, have to come with me. I'm like, all right, fine, fine, we'll go. So I went to EDC for the first time in like 2007. Yeah,
Wow.
2007. And basically my mind was just blown. I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Like the like just the whole entire community of like the rave scene was just incredible. So I enjoyed my time there, was looking at everybody DJing on stage, and I was just like, you know what, like, this is fun. Like, I kind of want to like see what it's all about. And ended up looking online for programs and stuff like that to like make music, and just started tinkering away, just basically doing what I did in gaming. I spent like 13 hours a day gaming, because that's pretty much you have to do for like playing at the like at that level. And I
Right.
kind of translated over to doing music. So I did 13 hours a day in music and just kept going and going because it was just so much fun. And eventually I learned it, and then send out music to what is it, Marcus Schulz's podcast way back then.
Oh, damn,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, and I was just like, you know what, let's just send this, because all my friends are like, dude, you need to send this track. This track is actually really good. And sure enough, he ended up playing it on the radio. So we ended up getting a release with them. And then after that, what's it called? I had another collab with another collab with this guy named Thomas Cressine, and we signed our first record to Air Up There, a Tritonals label, with my first group, Norn and Rad, and that's when pretty much everything kind of exploded. Every single artist was playing that track, and that's when we really, I guess, hit it off pretty much.
What year was this?
So that was 2009, I want to say, almost 10. So yeah, it took me about like a couple years to get the hang of like actually like making music and producing and all that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of quick, but at the same time, I spent a lot of time like every day. It was
Right.
couple hours a day and stuff like that. I was actually, it was kind of fortunate, because like I had started a job right after school, and saved up enough money to basically buy my studio. And just like I just told my mom, I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to do music, and it's risky, but I really feel passionate about it. And she's just like, all right, like, I'll just come, we'll live here, and we'll, and I'll make sure that I got food on the table for you and all that kind of stuff. So
Yay, mom. I mean,
really, yeah, she really helped me out, through that, and basically it worked out. So
dude, I'm happy that you've had some very good supportive parents. I love that.
yeah.
I'm curious at that time because you mentioned 2009, 2007, 2009. That's an interesting time period. I think I just graduated high school. I was in college.
Okay.
And I'm wondering for you specifically at that time, because the production scene, the whole production scene was vastly different from what it is now. I mean, that's a good decade.
Hmm.
At that time, what was it like learning music, like learning how to produce from YouTube, and what were some of the things that you were using at that time? Because I'm pretty sure that they're not using a lot of those things anymore, not as much at least. So I'm wondering, like, what were some of the hurdles that you had to learn how to go through, and what were some of like the instruments and plugins that you were using at the time that we no longer use? I'm curious.
Honestly, mainly the hard part was just straight up basic knowledge of like knowing like new, plugin knowledge, where to get samples, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, like my workaround and how I ended up making music was basically I would just end up doing like the old school style and sample other people's tracks. Like I would take kicks and the claps and stuff like that because I didn't know where to find like actual good samples and other than just like Vengeance and stuff. But I would hear them and I'm like, okay, like these sound cool, but I feel like I can just take other people's samples because it's just a kick and a clap. It's not like anything like relevant, like a whole music piece or anything.
Right.
And basically I would just start doing that. But it was cool because when eventually my sound kind of came through, above and beyond what Jono he was telling me, it was like he's like honestly. They never did that because they always had their own like sample bank and all that kind of stuff. And he was just saying it's a nice touch to actually have other people's samples in your track because it brings a little bit of a vibe from their track and their style into yours, just because of the way they processed a specific sound. And it's just like nowadays, like now that there are sample packs, they've already pre-processed it, so it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't really learn a lot of things until I started meeting other producers and realizing that there was a lot of techniques that could have made things a lot more simpler. And so eventually, I developed kind of this whole entire new way of just kind of producing. You know what I mean? And then basically, when Andrew Bayer from Judah Beats, we started working together. He was just like he's very more technical because he went to a school and it's all like done properly, like they're just synths and like working it from the basic bare bone. And I just did it in a whole completely different way of just like finding presets and just like tweaking them the way I would like the sound. And like I didn't even know really music theory too much, but I was making music work because I knew what worked together essentially, but I didn't know like what keys were working with each other because of like the actual correct way or anything like that. It was just kind of, I guess I just had a bit of like a music kind of like knowledge already because I was always into music. I just never, you know, I never knew I could do anything really with it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and that tends to be something that I see quite a bit actually, which I'm glad that you are honest and open about that because I feel like that is always an interesting topic to explore, the difference between somebody who is very like professionally trained in music and not even just in music but in other things, but for this sake it's music, and then somebody else who may not be professionally trained but has an ear for it. I always want to explore that difference of, do you feel like you have this sort of freedom with music that you might not have had if you were professionally and very rigidly trained? And I say that because I feel like there is a difference of approach, kind of like how you mentioned that when you've been professionally trained and you have this knowledge of rules and how music is supposed to work, quote unquote,
mhm.
you tend to not want to explore outside of that box, so to speak. But when you don't have that training and you kind of know what sounds good, but you don't necessarily know the rules, you kind of just do whatever you want to some extent.
Mhm.
I'm wondering for you, did you ever feel like this inclination that you needed to learn how to read and music theory, or did you just feel comfortable just with your own DIY knowledge when it comes to like producing music?
I guess I felt kind of okay. I guess I just felt fine with doing everything just myself because I was getting the affirmation from everybody that everything was sounding good, and that was pretty much good enough for me. If like the fans were liking it, and I my friends were liking it, I was liking it. As long as I was happy, basically, that's what was that's all I really needed. I didn't feel like I needed to learn other than I did need to learn regardless, like music theory and all that kind of stuff. And eventually I developed it and learned how to play piano a lot more and all that kind of stuff. And it was all just a developing process. But generally I still do that even today, doing dipping into different genres and stuff like that. And that's even why I even left my first music group, was because I didn't feel I felt stuck working in one genre.
Hmm.
And with the whole trance scene being like very, very like particular back then, there were a lot more stubborn about, people like dipping into different genres and all that kind of stuff. And they were just like, no, it's only trance, and that's it.
Mm.
So I, left my group, and I was just like, I need to start fresh. So I literally I fell off the face of the music industry basically, and started, my other group, Bad Rail, which was signed to Matt Decent. And then we started working in that whole entire scene. So, and, basically I ended up being commended from Injuna Beats, going like, they did not think I was going to come back this way.
And what genre did you start exploring then? Once you left that group, what was that new sound that you were doing now?
Basically bass music, but we ended up kind of following the footsteps of like Major Lazer. So we got into, like, basically we called it Caribbean bass, where it was all like reggae and like more soca music, and mixed with like the modern trap and stuff like that. So yeah, and that was such a fun period. We literally went to Trinidad and engulfed in the entire culture over there, and just ended up working with so many different artists out there, and going to like the carnival out there, and such a fun time. I love Trinidad.
Dude, I love that. So I'm curious, when it comes to when it came to like the trance music, kind of backtracking for a quick second, you mentioned how at that time it was very much more rigid, I guess you can say. Like it was very much like only this is allowed, and
Mm-hmm.
anything else it was looked down upon. In your opinion, like why was that the case? Why was it so rigid? And so I feel like some would argue that a lot of these genres are still somewhat rigid to some extent, maybe not as much, but still to some extent. So I'm curious for you, where do you feel like that rigidness comes from, and why does it exist?
I honestly, I think people just want to have an opinion of being right of what's like good music and what's bad music, and at the end of the day, I think a lot of people aren't understanding that there is really no bad music at the end of the day. Art is art. People are gonna like what they like, and I think I think people have a hard time, like, what is it? I think people have a hard time, like, hearing that the music that they like isn't what a lot of like what the masses like, essentially. It's like pop
Mm.
music. It's very, much loved by the masses basically, but it's kind of pushed down everybody's throats because of like major labels and stuff like that. So people don't have the time of the day to go and look for new music and stuff like that. It's just they want to hear whatever's kind of in front of them, essentially. So, but then when there's people that actually are into music, and actually are diving in and going like, dude, why aren't you listening to this? Like, that's trash music and stuff. And it becomes somewhat of a divide. So I think it's just people aren't understanding the different variables that people have in different lives, and don't really realize that some people just like the way the music they like. Some people love dubstep, some people love trance, and it becomes this whole, again, so it becomes a whole music genre divide where it's really unnecessary, but it happens.
Yeah, it's almost inevitable. I feel like it does happen in almost every single genre, but I do feel like when you have the confidence and ability to step away and explore these concepts that tickle your brain, I feel like that's where magic happens in terms of music. Like
Mm-hmm.
you find a lot of interesting combinations and new genres are formed. So then
Mm-hmm.
after trance, you were mentioning how you went to Trinidad and you were over there, you engulfed in the culture. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you got there, did you have a plan as to how you were going to explore that musical culture, or did you guys just go and just decide, oh, whatever happens, happens?
We literally just went, and just whatever happened, and it's pretty much a lot happened. So we didn't realize that like a lot of the big singers would, because Trinidad's such a small country that like literally every like top singer you could think of in Trinidad was just roaming the streets, doing whatever, just going out to bars just like normal with everybody else. And you could literally go up to them and reach out and say, "Hey, do you want to do a record?" And they're like, "Yeah, let's do it tomorrow, whenever." And they would just jump on a record. That like no problem. Everybody was always open. Like, that's the one thing I love about Trinidad. It's a whole music like culture over there. Music is life to them basically, and so like working for them, and when it comes to music, they are down to work any time of the day. They want to work. They grind out there. So that was like one of the major respects we had. Going over there is just like it's such an incredible like mindset, and they're always so loving over there and just open arms to anybody that comes out there. It's incredible.
I love that, man. So when you were out there in Trinidad, which is it's like in South America, right? Or like Central America, Caribbean kind of area.
In the Caribbean, yeah, like
Caribbean.
near like Jamaica.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you're out there in the music I guess, technicality or like the genres that are out there, it's very much Caribbean, right? Like you were mentioning, it's very like reggae-esque.
reggae, soca, was it calypso, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I love calypso. Jesus, these are amazing musical genres. I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, when did you have experience with these genres and playing these genres before you were there?
Nope. Well, the only thing I listened to a little bit back then was reggae, but it wasn't like not enough to where I was listening to when I before I even got into trance, which was weird how I even got into trance. Was I was listening to hardcore music. I was like really heavy
Oh
into
shit,
hardcore.
nice.
And when I went to EDC for the first time, I ended up seeing like Pendulum and Above and Beyond for the first time, and I was like, I'm surprised I didn't go the Pendulum route because I was in hardcore music. But I think it's because all my friends were into Above and Beyond that I was like, it was something new to me, and that's usually what I looked towards more is like anything that's new. That's what really draws my attention. So A and B was new to me at the time, and I guess that's why I went that route.
Yeah.
But uh, but yes, I mean.
And you're right,
uh,
by the way. I feel like I think reggae is a good example. It's one of those musical genres that I think many of us love listening to because it's such a chill musical style.
uh-huh.
I do feel like when you hear it, me like myself for example, I can hear it, and I remember the first few times I heard it, I kept thinking like, oh, I can play that because I come from like a jazz background, right? But
Mhm.
I very quickly learned it's not an easy style. I mean, this is the same for most genres, but you
Mhm.
can't just sit there and play it overnight. Like, you can understand it to some extent,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things you kind of have to experience and understand how the music functions, as a unit and all that. And it can be very
Mhm.
difficult. So when you were there and in your experience, was it difficult to really understand how that sound or how that music is supposed to sound, or did you catch on fairly quickly?
It actually was a bit hard because like when we first got there, we were bringing kind of our our newfound bass knowledge, basically, our like trap and hip hop knowledge, and we were bringing more of like a modern the way that the U.S. basically makes hip hop and trap and all that kind of stuff, and bringing it over there, they were not like turned off, but they were like, this isn't really the right way to like make soca music or make reggae and stuff like that. So we had to figure out how to mold the two genres together to make it work for them and for us as well. So it was
Ye-
a bit of a challenge at first, but like we eventually figured it out, and kind of like how Major Lasers has been doing it. They've been doing it pretty well, like actually really well.
Yeah.
Since day one. So we really like looked up to them a lot, and they ended up bringing us on their label, and kind of they actually really respected it a lot because two of the members from Major Laser were from Trinidad and Jamaica, and I think that's what they and Diplo, he's like all over the world, but they really respected that we went out to Trinidad and actually engulfed in the culture and paid respect essentially to it.
Yeah, that's always mad respect. Like, there's a difference. I mean, I think to everyone tries their best to learn from cultures,
Mhm.
as best as they possibly can. But there's probably nothing better than going out there, living there, and
Oh, yeah.
engulfing in the culture. I'm curious, musically wise, when you were out there trying to do reggae and soca and all that, what was there a moment where you like where a light bulb went off and you were like, oh, okay, these are the elements we got to do to make it feel right? I'm not sure if there was a moment
Mhm.
like that, but I know that sometimes when you're experimenting with genres, especially when you first start, it can be like a clusterfuck. You're just kind of trying whatever. And at some point, sometimes you kind of get this moment where, like, oh, that's what the bass is supposed to do. And then that kind of
Yeah.
leads into like five other things and it kind of creates a domino effect.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what happened. It was like it's that's how it always is with music and making new kind of I'm always trying to make like a new not really a new style every time, but every track I always try to make is got to be different to me. I try not to make the same templated stuff like all the time, and so it's very much trial and error all the time. There's never really like a moment where I'm like I know like it's more rare for me to know exactly what I want and get the exact result. It's more of like thinking, okay, this is what I want. How can I come close enough to it? So then it becomes just a whole trial and error thing. And that's the same thing with, going over there. We didn't know exactly what to expect. It was just trial and error until it just clicked, and it kind of a light bulb went off. But it was more of like, it didn't happen every single time with every track. It was just like, this one works, then this track didn't work, and next one does work. So,
Yeah. So then
yeah.
you were out there, you were in Trinidad, you learned how to do that musical style and very well, I might add. So what happened after that? Like, what came next in your path, in your career path?
So yeah, we went did that. But the Bad Rail group, kicked off, started touring and all that stuff, and then eventually we started kind of like falling out because I kind of saw it coming too because we had four members in the group, and usually with that many people, especially in a DJ group, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and we kind of just we kind of saw it coming where a lot of us were kind of just losing a bit of passion because we all kind of wanted something different. And so, at the end of the day, I was going through some stuff personally, and I moved out to LA or just by myself to LA out of the house that we were all kind of living in. And one of our other music partners, he went back to Israel, and we kind of just we didn't really end the group, but we just kind of stopped focusing on it really, completely.
Yeah.
And then basically during that time too, I was already starting the FATUM group that I'm in. So kind of going back to my trance roots, and basically that whole group started kicking off as well. Got the whole Grammy nom and everything, and basically just kind of ran with that after that. And then I've been working on again my solo project for the last like couple years, and not really saying too much about it because I didn't want people to expect something and have this whole anticipation and hype. So I wanted to try to get some music out there at least before I actually announce anything, so that people can actually see what kind of like just kind of experience it on their own rather than going like, oh, I can't wait for this music to come out.
Yeah. No.
So that's kind of been like a bit of my journey right now, is going through Battle Rail to back to Fatum Trance, and then kind of doing now my own solo where it's like anything I want goes pretty much. I can, now I can actually I've never actually had a solo project throughout my entire career. I've always been in a group. So now it's like really, it's a lot of fun now because I'm able to just do whatever I want and not whatever the group needs.
Yeah, I'm wondering, does that ever overwhelm you to some extent? And the reason why I ask is because I've talked to and met and even worked with plenty of people who were part of groups, bands, or producer duos or whatever, and sometimes, not always, but I would say it's more rare, but there are some moments sometimes where um people break away and they kind of want to do whatever they want, and then the minute they get the opportunity, it overwhelms them completely. It doesn't sound like it overwhelmed you in the least. It sounds like you love it. But I'm wondering, did that ever like occur to you? Did you ever like encounter like a moment where you're like, oh shit, like what now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think when I first started, it was overwhelming, doing my solo career because since I never done that before, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I think doing a solo project is so hard because picking your own name, picking like your own like kind of like visual idea, and all that kind of stuff, and just in generally the music too. Like when you start making it, you're like, what path am I going to take? Is since I can do whatever I want. It was just so open that I didn't have like really a planned structure or anything. So then eventually when I figured out my whole branding behind it and figured out the whole idea that I wanted to create like an anime basically with this like, mask gimmick that I'm going to be doing.
Oh, I
Eventually I'm not going to be
love
wearing
that.
the mask. Yeah, I'm not going to be wearing the mask all the time, but it's going to be, I want people to know it's me and stuff. I just want people to see that this is an anime, like an actual concept that I'm trying to build around it. And with the whole, and hopefully with a lot of the music to wrap around the whole entire show as well. But at the same time, I still want to make music not just directed towards that, but just kind of whatever I'm feeling at the time. I want people
Yeah.
to be able to actually, enjoy that. And I think over the years that all the fans that I've kind of accumulated, with like going from Norn and Rad to Bad Rail to Fatum, people have seen that I've been able to jump genres, but still not really lose touch, I guess, of like the sound I've been doing, my entire life. And that's the one thing I've always tried to do is pay respect to fans that have have been there for me basically the entire time. Is like they you don't want to make some like start like going in one direction and then veer off and kind of screw the fans over that have been following you from the beginning.
Yeah.
I've always tried to like make music still for the fans that still loved, what I've done in the past. Like so like when it came to Norna Rad, when I went back to Fatum, you know, the old Norna Rad fans were like, "Oh my god, he's back." So, so I'm able to do what I want in my solo career, that people that for the people that love bass music and love just, experimental and just enjoy just anything I make basically. And I still have the Fatum group to still pay respect to like a lot of fans that have always been there for me in like the trance scene and make still music for them as well. So
Yeah, that's actually pretty smart, man. Like I feel like you kind of you kind of, I'm not sure if stumbled upon is the right word, because it seems like it was very much intentional, but you kind of have achieved this thing that a lot of artists try, that they crave, because it is very it can be very much draining to always be in one genre, and this is doesn't even have to be in electronic music. It's really much across the board that it's very common actually for a lot of artists to kind of get sick and tired of the one thing that they've been known for a very long time, but breaking away from that can be incredibly challenging, almost impossible at times, because like you said, you run the risk of alienating a lot of those people that liked you at first, and then now what? So I don't know, how do you think you ended up in this position where you're able to kind of do many things and do whatever you want and do it flawlessly, and to the extent that you do? Like, I think, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, clearly there was some intent behind like your career choices, but I'm willing to bet that this wasn't your plan like 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure you didn't like sit there and map it out. You know what I mean? So how do you think you ended up here?
Honestly, it was just because of like kind of just sheer randomness. I like when I left my first group, I was planning to just do a solo project at that point, and I started it. But this was at the time when like progressive house and like the bigger EDM kind of like popped off, and I was just like, well, I guess I could do this, and I started doing it, and I was just like, I don't know, I wasn't having fun, I wasn't having the fun that I was expecting because I didn't know what I wanted to do, in my own solo career. And I think it was just because I was still somewhat new to the whole industry and just figuring out what it's all about. And basically, I wanted to explore something that was going to be fun. So when I moved in with my friends basically in San Diego, that's when we started Battle Rail, because we were literally just having fun making dumb music, like dumb music to the extent of like farting in our iPhones and making beats, like like that kind of dumb stuff, like. And but that's what it was. I never made music that was just like the Lonely Island kind of stuff, just really random funny stuff.
I love that.
And that's what got us into like the whole bass music, because we did it as a joke, and that's what was fun about it. But then obviously when it became serious, it became kind of more of a job, and that's what I kind of always try to steer away from, is making it feel like this is a job. Really, it's still a job, but I want to be able to make music freely and not have to stick to the script,
Yeah.
you know? So,
So if it ever came down to it, like if music ever 100% became a very rigid job like structure, would you just walk away?
pretty much. Yeah, like I think that's why I've already decided that like I'm never going to like be in another group again. It's basically FATUM and my solo career now, because like right now that I have now that I have a path with my solo career, and I know exactly what I want to do with it, and I'm leaving a lot of open ends, where that's why I didn't tell anybody really about it and just started releasing music. And just because that now when people come hear the music, they clearly see, oh, he's doing pop music, he's doing bass music, he's doing even house music. Basically I'm already kind of paving the way without building really like really setting people's expectations up, so that it leaves me open to not have to follow the script, and I can still have like the Fatum group that basically sticks to like techno and trance, and then my solo project where I can just kind of be free with the wind. So
Yeah, I love that, dude. I love your approach, because I do feel like you did stumble upon a bit of a gold mine, so to speak, that a lot of people want, and you're able to do that. Backtracking just a little bit, because you did pique my curiosity like a couple minutes ago. You did mention your solo project, and you have this whole anime aspect to it. I grew up watching anime. I think a lot of us did.
oh yeah.
I'm one. I know, dude. Over 9,000. Come on, it's over 9,000. All that stuff, dude. All that good stuff. But I'm wondering if we're allowed to know a little bit, like if you can walk me through maybe like visually what do you have in mind? Like, are you gonna dress as this anime character, or is there a lot of imagery that's gonna be happening?
Yeah, so I mean, I already got the mask developed and all that kind of stuff, and basically it's a reference, a play off a little bit of Dragon Ball Z. That's where I got my whole idea from. There's like a super villain on there. It's like one of my favorite super villains. His name's Super Baby in ABGT, and so I basically kind of developed like somewhat of like a newer face, but like having that kind of hair and stuff like that, and basically calling it BEBI. So the name's BEBI, because in Japan, like 10 years ago when I first saw this guy character, they misspelled his name. instead of BABY, it was BEBI. And eventually I was just like, why don't I just use that? And then, the whole anime idea came to mind after I started thinking about that, because I loved the name so much because it was just so simple. And but when I was thinking of imagery wise, I was like, this doesn't don't look like BEBI. Like I don't know if people would get it, or like, why people ask me like, why are you using that like alias basically? But now it makes sense because I have the whole animated tie to it.
Ah,
So
I see. And when I don't know how this character looks like, but when it comes to like the hair, are you gonna have that whole spiky getup, or is it something different?
I yep, the whole spiky get up. Yeah, I have it already.
Oh shit! How are you gonna pull that off? Like, are you gonna actually like gel up your hair, or is there like a wig?
I no, I have a whole mask that has the hair already pre-made.
Oh, that is
It's all
sick.
made. So they basically made a like a molding essentially of the hair, and there's actually like magnets in the hair to where it just latches onto like the helmet that I have with like the android face and all that kind of stuff.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
heavy?
so actually, it's not heavy, but it actually the magnets and the way it's like balanced. I need to make another one where it's like actually just one piece, because I when I started wearing it, and when you wear it for a long period of time and moving your head, it becomes like kind of hard in your neck.
Yeah.
So I have to make one where it's a lot more lightweight, where it's just maybe just all plastic or something, so I can, when I go on stage, I can actually move my head.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, because I know that when you have like, it doesn't look like it is, but it's just physics. When you have stuff that's like sticking on top of a mask, it just weighs down on you. So I was wondering if you had that figured out. But
Yeah, for now, for like just taking photos and stuff like that, it's perfectly fine. I can wear it for I can wear it for a good period of time. I just can't wear it and like move my head a lot, basically. So if I were to go on stage and and just like like headbang or something like that, forget it. My neck would just blow right out.
yeah, dude, I love that. I love that you have this like passion for anime and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, not to like geek out or anything, but what were some of the ones that you were mostly into that kind of influenced a lot of this? I know you already mentioned the supervillain that influenced this particular style, but overall, like, what were a lot of the elements that kind of influenced this decision to go this anime route? Because I mean, again, I love Dragon Ball Z and I love a lot of the ones that we grew up on, but
Mhm.
it's a, even though it's popular now, growing up, it definitely wasn't popular here, at least not as much as like it is now. So I'm wondering why the choice to go this anime route. Like, what was the deciding factor that like, oh yeah, this is gonna be my branding?
I think it was mainly just, I don't know. It's because I grew up with anime. I love like Cowboy Bebop,
Ah,
Full Metal Alchemist,
of course.
Gundam Wing was like actually one of my favorites. Um,
Did you ever watch Trigun by any chance? That like short
I
series?
watched a little bit of Trigun. I usually was always on Toonami and just see whatever like was pretty much was on.
Yeah.
So like I'd end up catching like some episodes of like Trigun, but I didn't get like to finish a lot of the anime shows. I always ended up watching like half of them, and then because I ended up just doing other things and
Yeah.
kind of like someone. But I always loved anime. The one show that I've probably watched over and over and over again was Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, of
That's
course.
like one of my all-time favorite like series. And so but yeah, so I mean, I think it's just because I grew up with anime is the reason why felt actually I didn't again, it wasn't a plan to go the anime route. It was because I chose that name and was trying to figure out how to make this name me and make people understand why like why I even chose this alias. Like Diplo. That's his name because the first alias he had was Diplodocus because that was his favorite dinosaur. He
Ah.
just abbreviated to Diplo, and that's just a more suiting name. And like with Skrillex, he had I guess his story for that was his friends used to call him Skrillo in like in high school or something, and then he was like Skrillex is the name.
Yeah.
So I mean, that for me it was like I didn't know how to make the name Bebby work with me. Like what does what basically what do I have in common with this name essentially? Like I didn't really have anything in common besides that this was my favorite villain in Dragon Ball Z, and that's when I also was like I have to go the anime route.
Yeah. I love that, man. Visually wise, when it comes to like your visuals, are you gonna be having a lot of anime stuff in the background?
Oh, 100%. Like it's gonna be. kind of costly if I'm going to go and get like actually full animations done, but I'm going to try to get as much as I can done with the resources I have for now until it gets to a level where I can actually, probably or like hopefully build the actual show that I want in the future. This is like way in the future. Unfortunately, right now, since that's the one thing with COVID actually is it's a bit of it it kind of helped me in a sense because it kind of leveled the playing field in the music industry a bit.
Mm.
So where when I started, if I started this project and like COVID wasn't happening, I feel like it would be a little bit more struggling because like all these artists are still continuously flooding the music industry.
Yeah.
Like a lot of artists are still being booked for shows because they already have fans and they're already getting bigger and stuff like that. But when it comes to like newer artists, this is kind of a time for them to actually shine more than anything because they have opportunities to be online where people are actually going to visual or be able to see them right away and not have to wait for that to see them at a show or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's a bit of like it's a bad situation during COVID, but also there is a bit of a upside to it that I think a lot of artists aren't clearly seeing that they have an opportunity to capitalize on.
Yeah, and also I do feel like what I've noticed just from my own perspective and what I've like, seen happening is even though there is a lot of music coming out, I do feel like there was a little period of time. I'm not so sure if, like right now, but I do feel like for a good maybe 3 months, like during the summer, there was like this moment where there was a lot of like music fatigue. I'm not sure if you picked up on that a little bit, but there was like so much music coming out that
Mhm.
a lot of it didn't do as well as it normally would have. Kind of like what you were mentioning. A lot of the bigger artists, well, the really big ones obviously always do well no matter what. But a lot of like the like second tier ones and stuff, there was a lot of struggle and strategizing if it's worth it coming out with music now and stuff because it was kind of like fatigue. Did you pick up on that by any chance, or do
Oh
you
yeah.
disagree?
No, 100%. It's because people didn't know exactly what to do. Like they didn't have gigs and stuff like that to bring in income. So it's like, what else do they have to do besides music? That's all they know. So yeah, it was definitely a big music fatigue. But at the same time, I think again, like what I was explaining is that I think a lot of artists didn't pick up on knowing how to actually distribute music correctly. Like being able to not just to put it out and put it on their regular socials, but finding other ways like stuff like that to be able to still like show your fans you're there, and maintain everything. Basically, it's right now it's like a period of not really growing. Essentially, it's just maintaining as much as possible. And while there is no shows and stuff like that, but at the same time, you can grow from it. Like if you have a track that just happens to pop off, it pop. Just like any other track, it's gonna pop off. But how are you gonna essentially grow that during the time like this when you can't do shows and stuff? You have to go to Twitch, you have to go to YouTube, all those kind of platforms that you can basically you know keep your name growing essentially.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that you are very much it just seems like you're very good at what's the word? Navigating. And I like that. I like that you can kind of just pick up on a whim and you kind of do whatever you want. Cuz I think that it isn't that it's rare. I just think it can be easy to get to do that wrong. You know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you kind of have that instinct. You just know what to do, when to move, where to go, and I don't know. I think that's very. I commend that, and I'm wondering like, um, as we sort of start to wind things down a little bit, when it comes to your personality and you always kind of chasing what it is that you love to do, um, do you feel like that is something that ability to find something and then whenever that something isn't working anymore, that ability to just go somewhere else without question, is that something that comes naturally? Did you learn that somewhere down the road, or how is it that became part of your personality? Because I do feel like hearing your story, that has played a huge part in your success and your ability to maneuver. And I feel like there are a lot of up and coming artists, musicians that, they're all about the hustle and they want to get out there, but sometimes it can be hard knowing when to choose your own interests. You know what I mean? Like whenever you feel like, oh, I'm not feeling this, when should you hunker down and just, tough it through or move on? You kind of seem to have it figured out. And I'm wondering where that comes from, if you know what I mean.
I honestly, I think it's just the way I grew up. Like I've always just liked taking risks and kind of just like living life on the edge essentially. And and I don't. It's like it's just kind of embedded in me now. Like after I've done it, when I was growing up, I just didn't have like, I don't know. It's like it's hard to say I don't care about a lot of things because I care, but it's like I have this mentality of where if something bad happens, I don't dwell on it. It's
Yeah.
just like just move past it. Because at the end of the day, time just heals it. So it's like whatever bad thing happens, just life in general. And I think that's what gets me kind of like through any risky situations that I kind of put myself in. Leaving my first group, that was because I didn't know what I was going to do. Was I going to continue music, or was I going to do something else? And sure enough, things just kind of just started happening because I just put my foot forward, actually just did it. And I think that's all it is. Just you just literally just keep moving forward, even though something doesn't seem like it's going to pan out. As long as you're doing something, something could come of it.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with that mentality. I think that's part of the reason of why you've been so successful. I'm curious because you've collaborated and you've worked with a lot of well-known people. I mean, you started mentioning it a little bit earlier in the interview, like with the labels that you were a part of and things of that sort. Do you feel like this mentality that you have, and I just kind of want to hear your opinion on it because I'm willing to bet that the answer is yes. But you've managed to collaborate and work with like Major Lazer, Diplo, Armin van Buuren, like Steve Aoki, all those people. Like they know who you are and they know your work. In your opinion, a lot of these people who we consider like legends and just like yourself, do you feel like you guys all have a very similar approach to like your music career? Like you guys kind of just do what you want, and when it doesn't feel right, you're like, all right, next thing, no question. Do you feel is that something that you experienced?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, that's just how I guess. Like, I don't know. I guess any person that's just striving, for any kind of success, it just is just moving forward and looking for the next best thing. I mean, Diplo is probably the biggest prime example. He's got his hand in like everything.
Yeah.
Like he literally goes to country, and then he's like dressing the whole part, and like he really dives into every single possible thing, and gets into whatever's new. So I mean, it's really, yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems that way. There's some artists that have they kind of not had it handed to them. They still worked, hard, but they were kind of brought in because of like family and stuff like that, where they
Yeah.
had already like money to where they were able to kind of like support their dream essentially already. But I respect that even those artists still work like even harder doing what they're doing now,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And mad
yeah,
respect to those artists too. I mean, and mad respect to anyone who works really hard to get what they want. I think that's something
exactly.
that needs to be commended, which again is something that you clearly have done in your career. And I do want to thank you, Bruce, for being honest and open. I know it can be difficult
Yeah.
sometimes, but I feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of how we learn. I think collectively, as human beings and as artists, it's important for all of us to be very honest and just share what we think because I think collectively we all grow that way, and someone is able to maybe take apart your story and take two things that it can help
Yep.
them grow. I think that's what makes it worth it. So I'm curious. I know we already talked about it. We already talked about your upcoming project, but officially speaking, I'm wondering what's on your plate. What do you have any dates, anything planned, any official releases that we can know about that's in the horizon, or maybe nothing? I don't know. I'm wondering what's on your plate.
Yeah, I have one track coming out. I think it's December 3rd or 4th, one of those 2 days. I got to figure it out. But yeah, that's my a big collab that I did with Dead Robot, and I have Dylan Matthews singing on it.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so it's gonna be a pretty big record. It's gonna be coming out on Lowly Palace, and that's gonna be the day that I'm actually, or the release that I'm gonna be telling my fan base that I've been doing a solo project, and kind of and that's yeah, and I mean from there it's, I don't know, we don't have anything completely signed up. I have a lot of records already done and ready, but we've been trying to like hunker down on like a label that really wants to push the whole entire project as a whole.
Yeah.
And right now, since like labels are absolutely flooded to the brim with like music,
Yeah.
so it's like kind of hard to start like a new project, even though like I have like a bit of a name in the music industry, and they know that the music's quality. They just are like, we can't book anything right now.
Yeah.
There's just so much, like so many artists that are sending music in already and getting things already signed off. So they're kind of just trying to find like a window of opportunity to kind of squeeze this in, so that if the name starts growing a lot quicker, then there's more reason to actually put money behind it, and get behind the actual name or the project. So
Gotcha.
it's just it's a little bit of a process, but it's again, it's still fun. Like I'm enjoying every minute of just being able to work on what I want to work on.
I love it, man. Well, I'm happy for you. I know that you've got a lot of good things waiting for you in the horizon, and patience is a virtue. But I do feel like,
Mm.
I feel like you're not worrying about it, and I love that. I love that you're just like you're doing your thing. You're getting ready for whenever things are ready to go, and you're ready to just to launch after that. And I think that's
Yeah.
pretty cool, man.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, as long as I'm able to afford pizza at the end of the day, we're good.
Oh, yes, exactly. Exactly. I love that, man. Well, well, my man Bruce, thank you so much for taking time out of your day
Of course.
to for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. And to end things off, I know we already talked about it and you've said it very eloquently in this interview, but to kind of summarize it, for somebody out there who wants to be in your position, or an up and coming artist, or someone who really just wants to try and make something new during this COVID pandemic or whatever it might be, what is something that you would say that, they should be doing that helped you along the way?
Take risks. I mean, like, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be just questioning generally, like, should they do this because they already see so many people doing it. It's like, again, like Twitch. If you don't do it, then it's like basically. This is a bad example, I think, but like it's like saying like if you don't play the lottery, you don't win. You know what I mean? Of course, but the chances of the lottery are like way slimmer
Right.
probably going on Twitch and getting a few viewers, and then starting from there and building a community. So I think it's take some risks to step out of your comfort zone. There's a lot of people that just don't want, they like staying in their lane, but even if it's just for a week or a month, what's a month to someone of just trying something different. It's
Yeah.
not like you can go back to the way you want to do things after a month if you want.
Yeah.
So,
Very well said, my man. Well, that I couldn't have said it any better myself, dude. I love that, and I know that it's going to help inspire some people to do the same. Bruce Karlsson, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and I'm wishing you all the best, man.
thanks, man. Thank you for having me.